Hi everyone, JJ here with The Art of Value. Welcome. Well, today we're going to look at a recent interview with Jeremy Grantham. He's been talking more about the super bubble that he sees unwinding and the recession that he sees that's going to follow. Now, Grantham had this interview with Bloomberg Wealth's David Rubenstein, and he said that he was confident that there'll be a recession that played out deep into next year, 2024, and he said it will be accompanied by a decline in stock prices. He said the decline in the super bubble that he's seen has been slowed a little bit by the AI bubble, the mini bubble, or in this interview he says it's more than a mini bubble, but he said it's still playing out and he sees it happening with that recession happening into next year. Now, David points out that Jeremy Grantham has earned a reputation as a doomsday oracle because he's been predicting bubbles. He's got some of them right before they've popped, not afterwards. He's got some things wrong, it has to be said, but he has got some of the major events, some of the major bubbles throughout the 5 decades he's managed money. He's managed to predict those correctly. Not everybody can do that all the time, of course. In fact, it's very difficult on the macro level, but he's managed to do it. He calls himself a student of bubbles, and he's predicting one now that we've had a super bubble in 2021 and it's been deflating. So 2022 was part of that, but it's been hampered a little bit, slowed down by this AI bubble, but it's going to play out. I'm sure somebody will say in the comments that a broken clock is right twice a day because he has been wrong, or at least early, but he's been generally right about these bubbles. He did identify that 2021 bubble. It remains to be seen whether he'll be correct about the timing of this current situation. Other investors have talked about it too. Seth Klarman has said we've had an everything bubble, so he pretty much agrees with Jeremy Grantham on that. And so the deflating of the bubble, which started in 2021, really, the emerging tech was February 2021 when it started bursting, with ARK being one of the most popular stocks, ETFs in that sector. So he's seen that playing out, and it did continue, and then it followed with the major indices. But then this year they have gone up. So he thinks that the AI boom's got something to do with that, but he thinks it's going to continue down. So will he be right about that? It's a big call for sure. And a recession, that's a big call for sure, considering that the Fed has kind of said that they don't think that that's on the horizon now, but the Fed has been wrong too before. So we're going to have to see what happens. I certainly wouldn't make these big calls like Grantham is. It's really hard to do. Stanley Druckenmiller is another person that's made these big calls. He thinks the same. He thinks there's still going to be a recession. So these investors are in agreement about this. Now, if you're getting value out of this episode so far and you're new here, do consider subscribing to get more of this kind of investing content in the future. There'll be a lot more to come. Grantham's investing goes way back to the 1960s, and in this interview he said that he made a small fortune and lost it in 1968 in that bubble, and after that he became a die-hard value manager, managing money in a value investing way because he learned his lesson from that first bubble, and he's been identifying bubbles ever since. Every so often, not all the time they happen, but sometimes, and he says we've just had one. He doesn't see himself as a perma-bear. He said he sees himself as a realist, looking at the world the way it is, not the way that he wants it to be. But he said that every 20 years or so, rarely, people get very excited and forget about the fundamentals of companies and just think about the stocks going up, just following the stocks that are going up, and people get carried away. He says we've just been through that period. He studied the great bubbles of history, and after that first experience when he was younger, that's how he looks at the world, that's how he looks at the market. Grantham says that the over-enthusiasm for bullishness is just human nature. He says there's nothing more irritating than seeing your neighbor get rich by chasing stocks that just keep going up and up, even though the fundamentals don't match. Warren Buffett has said similar things too, by watching your friends and neighbors get rich, chasing stocks, chasing the FOMO, and not looking at fundamentals, and it does come crashing down later, but it's irresistible when there's such euphoria in the market, such enthusiasm, you just want to join in. It seems like stocks can only go up, stonks can only go up, which is what we saw in the last few years. He said it's a very dangerous thing, and Grantham says this too. Now, Grantham says that this tech bubble of 2021, which he calls one of the great bubbles, is not finished deflating. He says it's not over. Even though the market's gone up this year, he thinks it'll continue. We're not over. It was such a big bubble. It needs to deflate more, and it will, and then followed by that recession as well. Now, David asked him if he sees this recession starting in 2023, and really we're nearly 3/4 of the way through 2023, so there's not that much time left, and Grantham says it may start in 2023, yes, but he sees it running deep into 2024. It was pointed out to Grantham in the interview that the Fed is not seeing a recession happening. They think that we've kind of cleared this hurdle and there won't be a recession. And Grantham said that the Fed has been woeful. It has a woeful record of predicting these things, and it's almost guaranteed to be wrong. So pretty definitive there against the Fed. Grantham points out that the Fed's never called a recession correctly, especially after one of these great bubbles. In fact, they've prided themselves on stimulating these bubbles as they've been happening and just did not see the recession coming afterwards, contributing to the party, the euphoria, adding to the punch bowl, but not seeing the hangover coming. He said they always take credit for the beneficial effect of higher asset prices during these bubbles, but they don't take credit for the deflationary process as the bubble bursts and prices go down. It was pointed out to Grantham that he seems like he's not a fan of Jay Powell and what they're doing at the Fed, and he said, well, it's largely out of the Fed's hands at this point. The forces are working. He thinks there will be higher inflation, moderately higher inflation for an extended period, no matter what the Fed does, and therefore higher interest rates. He was asked about this mini bubble in AI that he sees, and he said, well, it's really not that mini, but mini in terms of it not affecting the overall economy. It's not one of the great bubbles, the glorious bubbles. We're coming off one of those bubbles, so this is just kind of a blip along the way. He doesn't think it's a new bull market just yet. He thinks there's more deflation to come, and this is just a mini bubble along the way as it's deflating, as the larger super bubble, the glorious bubble that he calls it, is deflating. So that's what the doomsday oracle Jeremy Grantham thinks is going to happen. That's how it's going to play out. He thinks the bubble is still deflating. Do you think that we've had this super bubble that he talks about and it's still deflating and it will still go down? Do you think we're in a bull market, a new bull market, and he's going to be dead wrong and that there will be no recession, or do you think he's going to be right? I think it's really difficult to predict these things, the macro about interest rates, inflation, what's going to happen in the market. I don't know why he tries to do that, but he does try to identify these bubbles, and he's been correct about that. But what do you think? Let me know in the comments. Do you think he's going to be right or wrong? Okay, if you're watching on YouTube, I'm going to put a link here to the previous episode I made about Grantham. I'll put it in the description as well. He talked about this pause in the bubble bust due to this AI mini boom. So go and see that if you haven't seen that already, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching or listening.